Hey friends, Black Girl Tech here. Today I wanted to talk a bit about exposure. I mentioned it in the last video. It is very, very important when you're thinking about exposing your children or other members of your family to STEM topics for the purpose of possibly, career options, etc. So I want to use it just as a moment to tell my story and how I got into the technology field and more specifically software engineering. So first, when I was young, probably about the age of 4 or 5 years old, my grandmother, Agnes Kelly, rest in peace, she was a math teacher. She had her master's degree in mathematics, and she had me doing fourth and fifth grade math from workbooks and her curriculum that she was teaching her students at school. She would come home and give me that same material, have me sit down at the table, do my multiplication, addition, subtraction, etc. with different tools. So I was already exposed to mathematics from a very, very early age at a high level. Secondly, I want to give a shout out to my mother, my OG, Colleen Kelly Deloach. And ladies, pay attention because this is important. I have this little joke in my mind that I give a lot of props to my mom because she went and got her a Russell Wilson, as I like to say, and she didn't marry Future. So get you a Russell Wilson. Your children just might grow up to be little software engineers. So that's a little personal joke that I have for myself and my family. But my stepfather was a programmer analyst, and he always had his computer and things around the house, technical books, and I just started picking stuff up and reading them, unbeknownst to, my parents. I was watching and I was observing. They didn't formally introduce me to computers. It was like they were just there. I was also very much into video games. I was one of the kids that, would rather stay inside and, play all the consoles all day instead of going out to play with the other children. Sometimes my mother would have to, force me to go outside and play, and she would kick me out the house. My, playtime of choice, was video games and being a gamer. So I want to say around the time I was 14-ish years old, my mother found a C-STEP program for me at Marist College. It may have been more closer to 15, but we lived up the road from Marist College in Poughkeepsie, New York. So a family friend of ours was heading up the computer science, technology, and enrichment program at Marist. So she enrolled me in this program, and it basically was an immersive on the campus where we explored topics like biology, and ecosystems and the computer labs. They often brought us to the computer labs. So that was kind of like a summer program, after school program. But what I would do on my own is that, I would just tell my mom, hey, I'm going to go use the computer lab down at Marist. And I would walk down there myself and go, to use Netscape, play games, chat, etc. So, I kind of had my own curiosities about computers and things. By the time I was 17 years old, Christmas came around. My grandmother purchased me my first computer of my own, and it was great because I got to tinker with it. I took it apart. I installed a media kit. I got to work with the operating system and, figure out games that were on the computer, because somehow it was kind of like, it wasn't like a computer from the store. Like she had found some computer guy, who had just given it to her. So it really didn't come with any instructions or, a manual. So I had to figure everything out. Like, what is exactly on this computer? What games, what the operating system was, how to use the command line and prompts. So I figured that all out on my own at 17 years old. And that's when I knew I wanted to go to college for computer science. So I ended up going to Clarion University of Pennsylvania, majoring in computer science. And I had this idea in my head that I was like going to graduate and go work for Lockheed Martin. I don't even know where that came from, but that's the image that I had in my head. So my freshman year on a break, I think it was like a spring break or something, I had gone home and my stepfather, Doug Deloach, by the way, I don't know if I said his name originally, he had a DHTML book laying on his desk. I picked up the book, as I usually did with his resources, and started reading it. And over that break, I taught myself how to create web pages from scratch and how to use HTML and JavaScript. In my curriculum at school, we were just working on like using Pascal, assembly language, but we hadn't got into any kind of browser-based scripting yet. So I learned and taught myself how to build web pages, and I immediately went back to campus and I built a website for the Clarion University Gospel Choir. And I contacted the IT department at the school. I figured out how to get an account for the organization, an email address, and server space so that I can put this website up. And I was able to spin that experience and finesse that into a position, a work study position at the Office of Career Services at Clarion. And that was my first work study job at the school. I was the first Black web developer for the Career Services Office, and I spent the next 2 years developing the Career Services portal as my work study job. So that was a great experience all around. By my junior year, I had picked up a second job at the IT department on campus, being one of the first members of the first group of student network engineers on campus. So what was going on at that time, Windows Millennium had just released. I don't know if any of you remember this, but that operating system from Microsoft was trash, and it messed a lot of people's computers up. So when the students were returning back to school, they couldn't connect to the network because of Windows ME. So what they did was they hired a group of student network administrators and they gave us kits, and they dispatched us across the campus to go and troubleshoot students' computers and get them back up and running on the Clarion University network. So that was my second work study job. Unfortunately, I had to depart Clarion University due to financial issues, and I moved back into New York State to go to the University at Albany, where ultimately I ended up getting my degree from. However, the 4 years that I was at Albany, I was kind of delayed. I ended up doing overall 7 years in school because I was never a full-time student. The way my credits transferred from Clarion, I could never be a full-time student. So it took me actually 4 years to finish up at Albany. But during those 4 years, I freelanced as a web designer and a web developer, building my portfolio, taking clients. I also had, to fully support myself and put myself through school because my family could no longer contribute to my education. So that was how I was able to continue my education and kind of subsidize my financial needs without having to take out too many loans, things of that nature. So I freelanced again as a web developer. And by the time I graduated in 2005, I had a robust portfolio. Now, I'm going to make an admission here. It's not something I'm proud of, but I did not graduate with the best GPA. But I still graduated. That's all that matters. But what I found was that employers really didn't care what my GPA was. They just wanted to know that I could do the work. So I landed my first job at Cupid.com. And that's my story. Thanks for listening. I have more episodes coming up, and have a good day.